Okay.
Yeah, here we
Let's
are.
talk track sisters.
Okay. Everyone, I'm here with Shannon.
Hi.
We're going to talk about the girls and their upcoming evolving track system situation today.
So I'm sure you're already aware, like, just some of the main benefits of a track system is one. So when I say track system, I'm just to state the obvious of what most people probably know, but in case you don't, we're picturing some kind of perimeter fencing, and it would have to be dual fencing to create a track. So you've got your normal outside perimeter fence, and then you've got an inner fence that creates enough space so that horses can go full touring around the space. And even on that note, in terms of how wide you're going to make it, you want to make it wide enough. You want to picture at any time, like if you throw down a pile of hay and there's a horse standing in the track, could another horse still get around them? Or can a horse kind of bully the space and prevent flow? So that's one thing you're going to want to consider in terms of how wide. How much space you have might dictate. You might not want to make it super wide, but I try to make it almost 2 horse widths. Wide. Okay, so that's one
Like
thing.
15 to 20 feet?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so just like spatial around it, about it, but yeah, and that might actually sound quite big. You can judge it, right? But that would be something I would have in mind. The second thing when we think of track systems, so one, we want that flow so they can slow. The big thing is that it encourages more movement. You might think, ooh, big wide open space, they're going to move, but you want to give them motivation to move, and channeling their energy with the track helps to motivate, especially if you have stations. So stations are a big part of track systems. We can come back to stations. But the other primary thing, and this is really relevant on Vancouver Island, but I think in a lot of other locations, is saving the grass. Because if we just let them out on here all winter, which we're coming up to the wet season now, you've trashed this for the whole year. So we want to preserve grass both for soil longevity and crop longevity, the grass, but also preserve the grass so they're not eating all the time. You've got 2 easy keepers, so you want to, so you get that principle. I just want to make sure everyone else understands that principle. So we're trying to keep grass preserved. We're trying to facilitate movement. So just having the track won't be enough to keep them moving. You've got to have reasons, things on the track. And that also gives us the idea of enrichment. A true track system shouldn't just be spatial organization. It should be variety. So should we start walking?
So we just put the shelter in. We're gonna, hopefully put some footing. And then some mats.
Great.
For keeping things feet dry and everything else.
And so for anyone watching, just personally, I actually really like these portable shelters. I have 2 of them. And you might not need this, but just so you know, other things you could do with this. We bought plywood and just zip tied it on. So that if things are getting cold, like this is a pretty sheltered area, but if you wanted extra dryness or wind protection, again, you've got easy keepers, they've got lots of,
but I like that, so putting that on the sides of one of them, because apparently the weather comes in this way.
Well, because even hay nets will get wet, and it's like, your hay nets aren't huge, but I have big bales,
and that's what we're planning on putting in.
Moist, and then depending on, because if you have a lot of stations, which I like to have a lot of stations, it means you're not changing the bales as often. So if moisture is getting in, it could be a mold issue. So just as a little hack on these particular shelters, potentially buy plywood and just I zip tie them, I drill and zip tie them on. And then you don't ever have to worry about if they were to lie down or roll that a leg is going to get through. So that's just a little tip specific on these. I love the idea that you're talking about putting mats down and maybe gravel, you said. So that's beautiful, and you've already got the hay nets in there. So that's, I think, all I would say about that. Going forward, in particular, when it comes to track systems, flow is the name of the game.
So corners like this, would you just
I'd almost want this in this corner. It's not a big deal. This is just my own obsessive
We thought with the building in the back, it would be good to have a wall there.
Yeah, maybe it will. Like maybe you can do with it what you want. That would just be a thing that would come up for me is I don't like dead ends. But whatever. It's not that big.
Could you put just like if we put just a fence little line of fence across.
Well, and you've only got two horses. People with a bigger herd, dead ends can be a bigger deal.
Yeah.
That if you're not thinking about how the horses that are lower on the pecking order are experiencing life, that could be
A bad corner.
a bad thing for them.
Totally.
So I just like slow, right?
Yeah, love
so
it.
carrying on. So the other thing that comes up, this is already on your radar, I'm sure, is how does this footing behave in wetness? We've had a lot of wetness lately. What does it behave like? It looks decent.
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty
It
hard
looks
cuts.
kind of gravelly.
Yeah, totally.
So you were very lucky if this is gravelly. Because
it seems to be, hey? Yeah.
What's a tough wake-up call for a lot of people the moment they go to put in a track system or just try to turn horses out in general is, depending on what the soil is like, this could end up in 6 inches, a foot of just churned up mud in a month from now.
Totally.
And if that's the case, and it was the case for me, I had to spend a lot of money putting in mud stabilizing grids. And that's a whole other conversation, but if you want to, that can be a, choose your own adventure, another branch that if anyone wants to talk about that, I can help advise on certain brands. But mud stabilizing grids that you put aggregate in for your track is most people's reality. I would say in a wet climate. But you will hopefully get lucky, but it will mean that this won't be so.
Yeah.
Nice
tree back here, so clearing and cleansing back here.
Well, and just to make it a little bit philosophical and, nature loving, I'm an animist at heart. So to me, anytime I can be helping to bring the life of nature.
Totally.
As you trim up these trees, they're calling for,
a little bit of love.
Not just love, but as you open up the space, suddenly this tree is a thing you can interact with a little more and your horses can interact with. And lo and behold, it becomes a character in your little story. A track should be a story, right? So if possible, if you can do things
back in there.
And those logs are on the other side, but gosh, that would be even cute.
Cut
little logs.
I think there's some here that we might be able to grab too.
Well, and you can put logs here and there back to proprioceptive playground, so mounds are good.
Totally.
But logs, that they can even if they don't jump them, but even if every day they have to do a bit of this. Or even sometimes mine will get like that and they'll be eating and then they gotta anything that's more movement. Totally. Movement. I don't know. That corner kind of speaks for itself. This looks a bit foggy. So that's like you might have to pay attention to.
Well, and I wondered if something like this with all these trees here, is it better to kind of cut this corner a little bit, give them a little more space in here, or
I could be wrong on this, but having a big sandy rolling pile is a good thing to have on your track. Now, I don't know if that's the worst thing to put here. It would depend how wet it does get. Maybe it only gets a little bit wet here. God, that looks like nice soil, though.
Nice, isn't it?
Holy crud. So maybe
that might be a nice, because it got nice sun over here, and
so maybe a big. I almost picture the sand piles like giant beanbag chairs for horses.
Totally. Raven loves her sand piles.
They can come, and if you make it big enough, if this is wet, maybe that won't matter. I'm not sure about that. You'd have to kind of see how wet it gets.
That's a really good idea for here, though, to use this.
So what were you saying? You were thinking of maybe
just wondering about these trees here. Do we cut a little bit?
Right. So are these look like fruit trees?
These are apple trees.
So
I don't really want them on the track because even right now I'd like to get them off of it just because I know the girls are eating what's coming down.
Exactly.
And they do not
and for the sake of the tree too, they don't want to be eaten by.
Raven is a bark eater, so
so you'll have to figure that out. Although, as just a general principle for track systems and for enrichment, I like my horses to have access. I like them to decide. I know that's counter to what a lot of people would say, because they're like, oh, don't let them eat maples, don't let them eat this. I'm like, you have agency. Eat what you need to eat.
Totally.
I have a wild horse in my herd, so I can only hope that he's giving his other herd mates good information about what is edible and not. So apple trees, maybe not. But for some of these other trees, I love to give them the opportunity that if they need to self-medicate on a certain kind of bark, arborists are probably cringing right now when I say that. Mine obsess over cottonwood bark, and I looked it up, and it's and anti-inflammatory.
Oh, interesting.
And they were going nuts on it. So who am I to say, right?
I know I almost hate bringing the chestnut tree out of the track.
Right.
You know, I thought about even making like a center, you know, line down because it's interesting down this middle part. And
Well, it's more resources, but could you do each individually?
right.
Or is that too big of a pain in the butt?
I don't
That's what a
know.
lot of people do with
I think I
orchard
could,
trees.
I could do like a back. Maybe, yeah, I was trying to
Maybe
think
put
of,
all these in a group, fenced off,
Exactly.
and then that guy.
and then that.
I don't know about chestnuts and horses. What's the deal with chestnuts
It
and horses?
doesn't.
Do they eat that?
They don't seem to. And Raven really likes hanging out under that tree.
Well, that's such a nice tree for an
It's such
additional shelter.
a nice tree.
It's not enough
So-
shelter that you could put a hay net in, but I don't know how handy you guys are. Like this winter, we're trying to upgrade our track by even just finding groups of trees like this and put a platform.
Yeah.
That can be at
A
least enough
shelter.
shelter for the hay bale, if
Exactly.
not for them.
Totally.
And so, because
Totally.
again, the more eating spots, the more they're going to move.
Yep.
So, anyways, you can decide, but yeah, for sure, these are all fruit trees. So,
Take those out. Those guys out.
yeah, that's a lot of apples
It's
for
a
those
lot
girls.
of apples.
And then, what are these trees?
I don't even know.
It's almost like a cherry, but it looks dead. Or yeah, maybe, I don't know.
It looks more like a silver birch, but not.
Right, it's not dead. Anyways, I mean, I think those are okay.
Yeah.
But of course, the other thing about giving them access to the trees is they can expose the roots and then weaken the
Yeah.
roots. So if this is boggy, which is, I could see it maybe being that way, that's something that
Yeah,
gotta
because these
watch
are not
for.
going to provide a lot of shelter. So,
Yeah.
like, it could take them, out, but yeah, we'll see
Yeah.
what
And
we want to
oh,
do there.
There's your potential inside fence stuff.
Yeah.
So they've got the plastic full. I mean, we've used them, but I just find they're not worth the money because they don't tend to last
Yep.
very long. This is almost, to me, this is almost asking for a little obstacle course playground that you
Well, there's some tires that I'm hopefully going to use.
Perfect.
There's the big tire here that I thought to drag out.
could, yeah.
And then do you think sort of coming a little wider here to kind of give them the shelter and then back around?
Yeah.
Would that be?
Yeah,
Because
well,
I was trying to think of what, because I know this is wider area.
well, and just this all seems like it, well, it's high ground, so I don't think it will
Yeah.
get that wet. It just is such rich soil that I look at grass this green and I think this is going to be boggy, but I don't, because this is quite high.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, reading elevation is really
Yep.
important. I know that sounds like an obvious thing, but not everyone looks at things in that term. So reading elevation and seeing where does the water flow is going to be important. So you're saying you're thinking about what?
Just
Cutting?
coming across this way so that the shelter, so we're not coming like and cutting. Like just wondering how to improve the shelter in all of it.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
You
'cause
see?
it's so far on the inside.
It's so far on the inside.
Well, so you might want to. So I like within a track to have zones within zones.
right.
And then also, if you miscalculated and the monsoon season comes and what you thought was going to be totally workable is actually not, that you can have zones where you can shut them in, or just for the
Yeah.
worst 3 weeks or whatever.
Totally.
So that still doesn't answer your question, but like, I would almost like run the track up this way and have this be its own little. I mean, this is nice and gravelly. Yeah. So I would almost have. Yeah, totally no. It's almost like it would be a zone within a zone. So you'd still have your perimeter everywhere else, but this would be its own part of the.
Okay.
So like, and then your gate there. So I could almost see it being. Oh, and then you have that. Yeah. Yeah. So it would be like. I don't know. Your line comes here, or wherever the most gravel is.
Yeah.
And then it's like here.
Right.
And then it's like here.
Yeah.
And then it maybe it goes along the line of the back of the shelter, unless you're wanting to use, I don't know if there's overhang.
Yeah.
and then it goes back onto.
And then it goes back on.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
So I would just make this a home base, like what other
that.
people would call a dry lot.
Yep.
Because in most places on the island, it would be just this.
Yep, totally.
So treat this like it's their paddock.
Their paddock area.
And then the rest is the track. And then if it ever gets really rainy, they'll get cut off the track. Hopefully not. But at least they'll still have this.
Have an option. Yep.
And at least they can go somewhere where their feet can be dry. And yeah. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing is like a hard 90 degree. I probably wouldn't have that. I'd almost do like instead of one post for your corner, I'd have like two, so it's like a 40. So you like shape.
Yeah.
So instead of it being this,
Right.
it would be.
Yes. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, totally.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I'm just trying to picture what their flow would be to get into this.
Yeah.
So I think that's still. We need it to come out of it again. We don't want to like. No, exactly. Come out of it.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
And then I do another like 45 degree. Because of course, if they get their flow on, they don't want a 90-degree turn.
Totally.
And that's the kind of thing that I put it in because my human brain was like, yeah, just put a post and that's a corner. And then later I was like, no, they can't get that. If they're going fast, they need to shave the corner.
Yep.
Awesome. So I don't know if that helps.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah, and then it's just a matter of going to Buckerfields or whatever and getting all your proper hardware.
Yep.
You know, the special brackets for the T-posts and all that stuff.
Do you heat up your fence typically?
In terms of
like fence, like electric?
No, not the inner one.
Yeah.
My guys are so good.
No.
They love their
exactly.
place
My
so
guys
much.
like their spot.
We don't even turn on our outside one, I think, anymore, but it's there if we need it.
Yeah.
But it's not live.
Okay.
The wire.
Yeah.
And then, so, do you want to talk about the other part, or is that kind of its own?
We have a little.
So that would mean that even once we're leaving the track space, I know that doesn't. Well,
it does close. Yep.
So, you know, if there were zones, if they can just come out into this space,
Yeah,
and
they're allowed. Yeah.
then
and they can go behind as well.
Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So then, if you're trying to do real consensual work,
Totally.
then that means you say, can we go to the ring? And they can genuinely tell you whether they want to come work or not.
I like that.
Not that you have to do that every time you work with them, but it gives you a better gauge.
Totally.
So that you could just kind of liberty them all the way here.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about maybe putting fill in here?
Not on this side.
Okay.
On the other side. So this side would be more like a ring space, and then potentially putting in around 10.
Yeah.
Around 10 area.
Do you know what you're doing for fill over there? Do you know about aggregate?
I have a good friend that works at Island Aggregate, but what are your recommendations?
Well, so hey, experts, I don't know who's dispensing this information. This is just my opinion. A lot of people talk about pea gravel.
Yeah,
and I don't know why in the world, or beach sand. So you want, like in aggregate talk, they call it, I guess it would be crush.
Yep.
Because crush has angles, and angles lock into each other and create more integrity in the footing.
Yep.
And for me with movement, I just came from a ring that had, talk about like suspensory injuries, just super deep with no grip. And if anyone wants to look at my footage of my ring, we can be monsoon weather and horses can be flat out gallop and they get so much grip off the surface and it makes them want to move. So I'm, again, there's experts that know more than me, but I'm just telling you at the anecdotal level, find aggregate that will grip, which I believe the term you'll have to ask for is you want crush.
Yep.
Right? Beyond that, there's many different types of crush. You might want to go visit and actually look.
Yep.
You want something that packs. So that's just a big thing I'd say, because there's a lot of people recommending pea gravel, and that's just like, I walk in a lot of footing myself day to day. You probably do too. And it doesn't make me want to walk.
Yeah.
And I can already feel soft tissue injuries happening for me, especially if I have to run on it. So that's something to think about. I want track footing that's almost as nice as ring footing.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
something
And
to think
out
about.
here, basically, we don't have a ton of time, but I was just thinking to put in like a track system, but like in just probably using my plastic posts and then just doing like an inner rectangle.
For the purpose of working around it, or in case you wanted to turn them out and they could have a second track?
A second track,
Yeah.
but also I thought if we could have a dual purpose of having like a ring area too.
Yeah.
But maybe not, like you said over there, not having 90-degree corners.
Yes.
We could take them
Flow.
into like a flow
Yes.
corner. And potentially putting the round pin panels up here somewhere that doesn't disrupt
Yeah.
too much
Yeah.
what's going on. Like maybe they could go, between these two trees here as a spot to work.
So you'll want to probably just look for your highest spot,
Yep.
elevation-wise.
Totally.
And if you have one of there's a tool for it. I forget what it's called.
Level.
No, there's like a something-ometer.
Okay. Just to see.
That will
level.
read the grade
Okay.
better than unless your eyes are really good at reading grade. But so you'll just want to find a high spot, and if the soil, again, these are things that for me I didn't know.
Yeah.
Soil can change greatly, even just in one field.
Yeah.
So what's good footing to work on can vary quite a bit.
Okay.
So just do your walkthrough, get a second set of eyes,
Yeah.
and base on where your round pen is going to go based on that.
I mean, it might be nice even to have up in this corner because you could kind of create a little track,
Yeah.
like around it.
Well, and this seems to get quite a bit of sun. I mean,
Totally.
so
and
that means
quite
it's going to
high.
dry out faster
Yeah,
too.
it's quite high. Yeah, so that might be nice. And then, like I thought I'd put just a basic rectangle-ish in the middle
Yeah.
here that we can work in, and then creates a second track.
Yeah. Well, then you've already kind of got like the beginnings of a fence line here, so I don't know
Totally.
if that makes for logical two separate areas.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there's other people that use this space, but it's always nice if you can segregate people if you're both working at the same time.
Totally.
But this is such a big space, I suppose it wouldn't.
Yeah, and then there's lots of forest and stuff back in there. Which is
Beautiful.
really nice for them to hang in.
I mean,
so.
given it's not a gigantic acreage, it's got a really nice amount of variety.
Yeah.
So that's
Totally.
to me that's a big thing because variety in the landscape is going to facilitate more movement and more variety of movement.
Yeah.
So that's
Awesome. Yay.
let the landscape do the work for you.
Thank you.